What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Moving with Life. Andy here. And last week I briefly mentioned how I'm done with school, so I bought this book, and it's been 10 years since I've been in school. I didn't know what to expect. I'm going in there with a goal. I have things I want to accomplish, so I registered, started school, and here we go. I didn't expect it to be the exact same structure, same format. I feel like it's double PowerPoint driven, and I get probably why. Now more than before, it seems like there's a disconnect between what we're taught, especially in a higher education system, and the preparation that's being done. So today, I'm gonna get into it briefly. So I'm not here to necessarily tear down education. We wouldn't have gotten to where we are without advancements in education, research, so on. But now, it's been 10 years since I've gotten my undergrad. A little bit more life experience, yes. My military experience is what really expedited a lot of things, especially my way of thinking and my approach to real life situations. But the disconnect and there's a loss between theory and the execution part that you're aiming for, especially if you're looking for some type of master's degree, master's program, etc., etc. And before I've said this is, this is what we're told: get a degree. This is your degree plan, and you follow it. You graduate. Cool. Again, going back to a little bit of life experience now. Some time to see how the world functions, how certain industries function, and now I'm questioning not necessarily the people, but maybe somewhat the integrity of what's going on. I just finished organic chemistry, Bio 2, A&P 2. Last semester I did the intro bios, A&P, and then I did stats. And same structure, 16-week semesters, makes sense. I get it. But when the PowerPoint is just being read verbatim, it's like, well, I can do that. And what I feel now is that you're reading 100 slides a week and then expected to, let's say, memorize, take a test, and then you move on. Sure, there's some, again, going back to theory needs to be understood, and there needs to be some type of foundational understanding of the information so that then you can apply that in a real world situation. But it still boggles my mind that, again, the system's the same. And I've had the experience where I had one professor that I'm thinking of in particular where he would use pictures and he would lecture. I had to record it, and he allowed recording, so I would record lectures so that I can, as I'm writing notes, I had to learn how to take notes because, again, it's let's say it's a picture and he's talking about whatever the event was, because it was a history class. And so I had to record it, because then I would go home and re-listen to it and say, okay, did I miss anything? Is there anything I want to highlight? Is there anything he mentioned twice? Is there anything he mentioned about the exam? And so that's what I would do. The fact that, yes, it's the same, but the other fact that there's 100 slides per chapter, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't make sense to me. These past 6 years, I come from this system, more of a systems mindset of, in the moments, it felt like a sink or swim scenario, but really it's what you could call like a structured rehearsal, because there's real world consequences at the end of it. But as you're learning, you're applying those things. You're applying the theory to whatever the practical application. And practical application is just another word for getting hands-on with the information that you were just taught. And I know, especially getting ready for deployment, when we were training, not just the operational aspect, but the medical aspect, everything needs to be harder, or it needs to be as mentally taxing as possible. I think that's a good way to put it, because it's like you don't know what the scenario is going to be, and there's a history of corpsmen and medics, Marines, Army, so on, all the branches where they have their own scenarios and operational things that happened in real life that, oh, if it weren't for the medic, if it weren't for the corpsman, if it weren't for being taught this way, or if we wouldn't have trained this way, I don't think that I would have been able to be as successful as I was, and maybe even being successful if you're in the medical industry, medical industry, we'll say, especially emergency trauma, so on and so forth. You know that the outcome's not always in your favor. You can try everything that you know. You can apply everything that you've learned, and sometimes you're not successful. And that's just a matter of fact. Nonetheless, you would learn. You have to perform the thing. And then eventually, once you got proficient in your task, job, so on and so forth, it became, the next step is to teach. Some of it's teach, okay, hey, this is what the book says. We're going to do this. Here's a way that I've been able to simplify it. Or here's a way that actually I have this experience with this patient. I had to modify it and go this route. Because the knowledge of a book only goes so far. And if you're, we'll say young, you say in your 20s and you are going through college, or you're aspiring to be some type of medical professional, business professional, it doesn't, I mean, medical is my experience, so that's what I'm bringing, but nonetheless, knowledge of a book only goes so far. Because then you're put in a scenario, in a real life situation where, again, the outcome can be helped by your real world experience. And so it wasn't just about passing a test, because yes, tests are important. You have to have a foundational understanding. I'm a very kinesthetic learner. I learned that. I think I even learned the word kinesthetic while I was in the military, because we probably did some type of survey or questionnaire where, what kind of learner are you? I'm pretty sure that's how that happened. If not, it was in my business degree. Either way, nonetheless, you pass the test, cool. Now can you actually do the job? Because you can actually help a doctor be successful in that outcome, or the nurse, be thinking like your provider, like your nurse, whoever you're working with, and you realize that working hand in hand, you have to be able to. And I think that's one thing I like about the medical profession in general, is that it's not only about books and theory and so on. You can't just know a book and have it memorized, because if you can't perform certain procedures, certain skills, then you won't be successful. In particular, for today, in a medical profession. And so I did take it personal when if I gained an experience, positive or negative, what did I learn? Hey, there's this new corpsman. This is what I experienced. This just happened, or it happened a year ago. It happened last month, but this is how I approached it. It worked. Or hey, I had to modify it again because this happened when I was helping this patient. College, military. I'm not anti-education because it's effective. Because theory matters, like I said, research matters. We wouldn't have the meds we have without research and so on. We wouldn't have light without figuring out some of the theory, right? But the example I can give is you can't walk into, let's say, an OR or an emergency room situation and be thinking, for the sake of example, you're not thinking about the powerhouse of the cell, which is the mitochondria. Cool, you know what that is. You know that at a cellular level, that is something that exists. I'm thinking about signs, symptoms, how long it has been going on. There's questions, and there's a system in place that I'm thinking about. And so right now I am struggling with what the school is feeding me information-wise with my real world experience. And so you're essentially being asked to trust a map without ever seeing the terrain, without actually stepping foot. That's a hard balance, but OJT, hard training. I'm not saying it's even a flawless system. It's because it's not. But it's the matter of fact of this episode, and how has the teaching structure not changed in 10 years? Mind you, we had COVID, right? So you had to figure out how to continue schooling, and that way, that doing that was Zoom calls and Google this and Google that. And because then the question I'm thinking of is, are we preparing, especially young students, are we preparing them for the world that exists and we're leading to, or is this thing really correlated, supplemental to a world that existed in the? Because there's a whole other thing being talked about as far as AI and integration and so on and so forth. So the fact, this is my opinion, that AI isn't being integrated in a certain level, being taught something, not just to computer science people, computer technology, information technology. This goes beyond that. And it's a question that's being brought up, but certain systems that are being brought in higher education primarily, what is it really for? And again, I have deeper opinions, but I'm trying to stay on topic here because I have goals and aspirations. You know, PA school's a thought. There's other secondary ideas that I've had to come up with because I don't know what's going to happen. Because I do know that where I've come from and the way I was taught and the way I learn is not correlated with just reading a book, just going through 150 slides of a PowerPoint. It doesn't make sense to me. And so as I close out today, I don't have a direct answer. And even then, again, I'm doing my own prerequisites and so on to so I can have a chance to even get screened for an advanced school, an advanced degree. But it doesn't mean I'm not questioning what's going on. Because even when I've had chances and moments to talk to professors one-on-one or adult to adult, that's the way I approach it, because I'm not in my freaking 20s or young 20s. And even then, you all that are in your 20s, if you're listening to this, you made it this far, you are super smart. And so I'm not taking anything away from that. But I am questioning the system. I am questioning, how is it still like this? That's the end of that. I'm already past the time that I wanted to go anyways, but if you made it this far, thanks for tuning in. You know, we'll see how these things evolve, these systems evolve, because we'll see what happens. That's the bottom line. We'll see where we go from here. If this episode resonated with you in some way, share it. You know, drop a comment, like, subscribe. YouTube, if you're on Spotify, a follow is nice and appreciated. Make sure you do a rating as well if you listen to it on Spotify. And so we'll leave it at that. Until next time, keep moving with life.